Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our Sheep and Goat Producer webinar. My name's Ebony Nowlan. I work for Local Land Services on the Sheep and Goat eID project as a Senior Biosecurity Officer in the Northern Tablelands. On tonight's agenda, I'll be giving an eID update, followed by Kiowa Fenner from Department of Primary Industries and Regional Development giving some information on the Sheep and Goat eID Equipment Program rebate, and following that we'll have Callum from Integrity Systems Company giving us a NLIS database demonstration. Just a very quick bit of housekeeping. I have disabled microphones for this webinar. If you have any questions, please put them in the chat, and we'll have, after Kiowa's and then Callum's session, we'll have an opportunity to answer your questions. Okay, I'll make a start on an eID update. So from 1st January 2025, it became mandatory for all kids and lambs born to have an eID device attached before leaving their property of birth. With that came all sheep and goats, regardless of age. If they had an eID device, they must be recorded individually on the NLIS database when leaving your property. So if they have an eID device, they need to be recorded individually rather than mob-based movements on the database. We have continued mob-based movements for sheep and goats that do have visual NLIS tags though. And as we fast approach the 1st of January 2027, it will become mandatory for all sheep and goats, regardless of their age, to have an eID device attached before leaving any property. And with that comes an end to mob-based movements on the NLIS database. Because all sheep and goats will have an eID device, they will require an individual movement on the NLIS database. So what changes do you need to make as a New South Wales sheep or goat producer? If you have sheep or goats, it's a switch from visual tags to eID devices. There won't be any changes to there's not any changes to your PIC requirements or your MBD requirements. If you are someone that harvests rangeland goats in New South Wales, there is a tag-free movement pathway for harvested rangeland goats going directly to slaughter or to a registered harvested rangeland goat depot. To access that tag-free pathway, you do need to do your HRG LPA accreditation, and with that will come a HRG accredited PIC and HRG MBD book. What are the NLIS eID device requirements? So your stock, your sheep and goats, following that implementation timeline, must have an NLIS eID device before they leave your property. If they never leave your property, it's not a mandatory requirement for them to have a device, but they must have one attached before they leave your property. One eID device only, and they must be NLIS accredited. If you're unsure, there will be a logo on the device that you can check that they are NLIS accredited. You must replace lost or non-reading NLIS eID devices as we do with cattle and visual tags now. Don't remove NLIS tags or devices unless they're not functioning. So if you have a non-reader, you can remove that to replace it with a functioning reading tag. Something to keep in mind is that NLIS eID devices are species specific. So when you are purchasing tags as well as applying tags, make sure that you're using the correct species tag. They are different between sheep and goats, and that is coded on the device on the NLIS database. And they can be attached to either the left or right ear. That is up to what ear you put them in. Something else to keep in mind when you're ordering and using your devices is that while we do strongly recommend using the year of birth colour system, it's not compulsory. What is compulsory is a pink post breeder, though. Sorry. So that's me. Just a quick few stats on eID in New South Wales since the 1st January 2025. So around 62% of the sale yard yarding in New South Wales this year, so from the 1st of January 2026, has had eID. And that's probably due to a big portion of lambs coming through sale yards as they're required to have the eID from 1st of January 2025. Around 33% of animals that have come through sale yards since the 1st January 2025 have had eID, And Corowa Saleyard's a bit of an eID superstar. They've hit a 84% average this year for sheep coming into their saleyard and being scanned with eID. Processors are sitting at about 30-40% of their kill having eID, so coming in and being scanned. And that's me. So that was pretty quick. But again, if you've got any questions about any of that, please put it in the chat and we can answer that after Kiowa's session. And I'll pass it over to Kiowa. Thank you.
Thanks, Ebony. Evening, everybody. Thank you so much for making the time to come on to this webinar tonight. It's great to see so many people registered and jumping on. As Ebony said, my name's Kiowa Fenner. I'm the Director of the Sheep and Goat Traceability Program here in New South Wales, ensuring implementation rolls out across the state. Tonight I'm going to talk to you about the recently opened eID equipment rebate program that is specifically for producers and livestock agents. Next slide, Ebony. So what is the program offering? So the program is offering a rebate for producers and for agents up to 50% on eligible handheld eID readers. That is capped at $1,500, excluding GST per applicant. There is a total amount of $2 million available for this particular program, and it will be assessed on a applications first in, first served basis. So unlike the previous rebate programs where you could apply, you could have funding quarantined, you could then go out and buy the equipment at a later date and come back and be sure that there would be money there. That's not the case this time. It is you need to have purchased the equipment and have everything, all your information ready to go. And basically, as it says, first in, first served. Once the money's gone, the money's gone. So next one, please, Ebony. So the application's opened on the 2nd of March, so on Monday, and is open. It's a 6-month program, open until the 31st of August or until funds are exhausted. In relation to some of the conditions regarding the program, the equipment must be purchased and paid for before applying. So as I said, unlike previous programs, you do need to provide a tax invoice, and proof of payment must show the applicant's name both on the tax invoice and on the proof of payment. And eligible items must have been purchased on or after the 3rd of October 2023. So we're mindful that since the close of our original rebate, that people may have gone out and bought equipment since then. So they are able to come back, and if they can demonstrate what they need to, they can jump on and be part of the program. They won't have missed the boat. Next one. So what's eligible in relation to equipment? So it is currently only for new eID handheld readers. It's not for second-hand equipment. And for this particular program, we won't be funding devices as in eID tags, panel readers, antennas, indicators, or wand extensions. It's just for the actual handheld reader or wand itself. Also, we are not funding tablets and software as part of this program. Who can apply? So for producers, you need to have an active New South Wales PIC to be eligible. You also need to have an active ABN and a sheep and goat enterprise. How do you demonstrate that you participate as a sheep or goat enterprise? We'll look at things such as your tax information. If you're new into the industry, if you can demonstrate or provide a tax invoice within the last 12 months to demonstrate that you're newly entered the industry, we'll consider that. Additionally, you can't have received any funding from any of the previous infrastructure rebate schemes. That also includes, unfortunately, if you did get a panel reader or handler in the previous one, you can't now go and get a handheld one. For livestock agents, you need to hold a valid and current New South Wales stock and station agent licence, and again, have not received any funding under the previous infrastructure rebate program. How do you apply? Jump onto the New South Wales Grants Finder website. If you head up to the search button and type in Sheep and Goat eID, it'll take you to the landing page. There's a photo of what the landing page looks like there at the bottom of the slide. What you'll need to do is confirm your eligibility. So you'll need to demonstrate and provide some documents that confirm your ABN, how you trade, whether you have a PIC and all that sort of information. You'll then have to demonstrate that you've already purchased the equipment with the required documentation and then submit your application. So it is quite an easy process for producers. If you do have any questions, we do have a number of frequently asked questions on the website, or by all means, you can email the Sheep and Goat eID email box, and we're more than happy to get back and guide you in relation to that process going forward. Do we have any questions at this point in time?
We'll just give it a second, but it doesn't look like.
It's the one in the chat about the hock leg band, which we've seen some uptake of, but as I mentioned, they've got a fairly specific use case, so we haven't seen a large scale uptake of them.
The price is also potentially cost prohibitive for some people, just because they are considerably more expensive than the ear tags.
Great. Thanks, Kiri. Thanks, Kiowa. If we don't have any questions at the moment, we will move on to Callum's presentation. If you think of any in the meantime related to either Kiowa's or my information, please put them in the chat and either Kiri will answer them or we can answer them at the end. Great. Callum, if you're ready to make a start.
Yep, sure. Thanks, Ebony and Kiowa. Hi, everyone. My name's Callum Kachenko. I am part of Integrity Systems Company. I currently work in our operations team. My current role is customer experience analyst, so analysing all of our stakeholder feedback, not just producers, but other aspects of the supply chain as well, such as abattoirs, agents, feedlots, sale yards, etc. Collating all of their feedback and pain points, I suppose, and working with the business and industry on improvements that we can make to make our systems easy to use for you guys. So if you do have any feedback on the content for tonight or anything else in general, please do feel free to get in touch, because we really do value your feedback, and honestly, hearing feedback firsthand is how we can improve and make things better. So yeah, please get in touch with us at any point. So we'll go through. So just what we're going to cover off, I'll just give a bit of an overview of Integrity Systems Company, who we are, what our role is, where we sort of fit in into industry. I'll give a little bit of an overview of sort of the key programs and products that we manage, how that all sort of integrates into the red meat industry, how you can sort of meet those sort of key requirements, particularly from an NLIS perspective tonight, as we focus on sheep and goat transfers. And then I'll cover off a live demonstration of how essentially how to transfer sheep and goat tags in the database as we transition from the mob-based scheme. So just a quick little overview of ISC. So ISC was established in 2017 to really underpin sort of the integrity and safety of the red meat industry. We focus on farm assurance through our quality assurance program, the livestock production assurance. We've got the LPA national vendor declarations, so either the paper-based NVD books or the electronic NVD system, for those of you that may have used that in the past, which communicates key information around animal treatments and food safety as stock are moved through the supply chain. And then the NLIS database, which really focuses on identification and traceability of animals. So where we sort of fit into the whole picture of the red meat industry, so Integrity Systems Company is a wholly owned subsidiary of Meat and Livestock Australia. So we're essentially service providers for the red meat industry, and we sit below all the sort of peak industry councils and the supply chain task force, who provide a lot of input into how we operate. And we obviously do a lot of heavy liaising with all of the state governments and departments of agriculture as well. So as I briefly mentioned before, the three sort of key products and programs that we operate are the National Livestock Identification System, the NLIS database, ENVDs or NVDs for those of you that are using the hard copy books, and the Livestock Production Assurance LPA program. So for NLIS, well, I guess for NLIS and LPA, the whole starting point is obtaining your PIC number for your state department, and PICs are really essential because that's your main identifier for your property, and that enables us to fairly easy track and locate where animals are being moved throughout the supply chain. The ENVD and NVD are obviously the documents that are have got those key information when you're completing those for moving stock off your PIC, and they provide really important information for the receiver of that livestock in terms of the produce that they're receiving. And the LPA being our quality assurance program. It's got 7 sort of core requirements, if you like, around property risk assessments, animal treatments, paddock treatments, biosecurity plans, animal welfare practices. For those of you that would have recently completed your LPA accreditation renewal, you'll notice that we've shifted from just a generic online questionnaire to what we now call a self-assessment. So it's really now just you guys basically answering questions in relation to those key requirements and making that link between what your on-farm practices are and how they link with the requirements of the LPA program. So we'll focus a little bit on NLIS a bit more tonight, given we're going to be looking at how we do sheep and goat transfers in the database. So as I said before, it'll all start with a property identification code, a PIC that's that you obtain through your state department. All livestock will be identified with an NLIS accredited device. So at the moment, some of the older sheep and goats will still have those visual tags, but as Ebony and Kiowa mentioned before, any sheep and goats born from 2025 onwards must now have an electronic device. Yep, next slide. So this was already covered off, but just to reinforce that you need to have an NLIS approved eID device before stock are moved off your PIC number, and that tag on that device should remain with the animal for life. If for some reason the original device falls out or becomes damaged, for an animal that was not born on your PIC, you need to apply a post-breeder device. And in an ideal scenario, if you do happen to have the original tag number, you can actually do what's called a tag replacement to effectively link those 2 tag numbers together in the database. So for breeder devices, if you also operate with cattle, cattle devices are white, breeder devices are white, and post-breeder are orange. And for sheep and goats, as they said before, the year of birth scheme is recommended but not mandated in New South Wales. But for post-breeder sheep and goat tags, they must be pink. And this is just to give you a little bit of a breakdown of what the NLIS device numbers will actually look like. So the top number there is what we call the electronic RFID. So that's the number that actually sits inside the tag itself, and that can only be read with a scanner or a wand. And then what's physically printed on the outside of the tag is what we call the NLIS ID or the visual number. And that is 16 characters, which is broken down into the first 8 characters being the PIC number. So that'll be the PIC of where the animal was born. 3 letters, which will signify the tag manufacturer, the species, and the year that it was made. So in terms of the species, what I mean by that is that, so the letter K there, that's to signify that it's a breeder goat tag. The letter L would be a post-breeder goat tag, and then we've got letters S and T for breeder and post-breeder sheep tags. And then the last 5 numbers there will just be the serial number. So when you're recording your NLIS movements in the database, you just need to use one of these numbers. So these 2 numbers will be linked together against the same tag in the database. And when you do your transfer, you either use the RFID or the NLIS ID. You don't need to use both. And so, yeah, for recording movements in the database, you need to create an NLIS account first. If you don't have an account, you just go to the website. I will show you guys the website in a sec when we jump into the demo. And you just register for an account as a producer. And then we will activate that account for you. There's no extra fees or costs associated with having an NLIS account. It's the person that's receiving livestock that is responsible for ensuring that the transfer has been completed. If you do buy stock from a sale yard, they will actually do the transfer for you, but we still recommend that you use your NLIS account to verify that that movement has been recorded properly. Online selling platforms such as Auctions Plus won't do the transfers, so just be mindful of that. And for those of you that may rely on an agent to do your transfers, we strongly recommend that you get confirmation from them within the corresponding NLIS upload ID to confirm that they actually have done that. We do get a lot of cases where producers are relying on their agents and they just assume that it's been done. And the agent actually hasn't done the transfer, and it's only sort of later down the line when those animals get sold again that we realise that the transfer was never done in the first place. So your agent certainly can do the transfer on your behalf, but as the receiver, you still need to be responsible for actually ensuring that transfer has been recorded, and also to include the NVD serial number that you receive from the vendor. Make sure that you include that in the transfer as well. Okay, so I think with that, I might just now share my screen and we'll just go through a bit of a live demonstration of the NLIS database, and we'll go through and do some transfers just to show you guys how it will all work. Did we have any sort of burning questions before we start that we need to address?
It doesn't look like there's any in the chat, Cal.
No, we're okay. All right.
Yep.
Well, I'll kick off with the demo, and we can always circle back to Q&A afterwards as well. Okay, so can we all see my screen? Ebony, can you just confirm you can see an NLIS? Yep, perfect.
Got it.
Okay, so you just go to this website, nlis.com.au. You're going to be presented with 2 options to log in. You can either log in via MyMalay. So MyMalay is essentially a single point of access for your ISC accounts. I guess probably the best comparison would be like a MyGov. You've got a MyGov account, and within MyGov you would have multiple services linked, such as the ATO, Medicare, etc. So MyMalay is a similar concept where you can just have your MyMalay account, which would be an email address and a password, and you would then have your LPA NLIS accounts linked through there. So you do have to have a MyMalay account to get through to LPA. You don't necessarily have to have a MyMalay account to access NLIS at this stage, although in the future we will be looking to onboard NLIS users through MyMalay as well. So if you haven't got a MyMalay account, or you haven't got your NLIS account linked to MyMalay, we do recommend doing that as soon as possible. But for the time being, you still have the option down here to actually just log into NLIS directly if you prefer. So we'll just do that for the time being. And this is just the login page. So we're just going to log in as a producer. So most of you, well, pretty much all of you, I think, being in New South Wales, you'll have the number 2 and then either PROD or just PRD at the start of your username, which is to signify that you're a producer, followed by some random characters. And then obviously you've got your password. So we'll log in. And so this takes us to the producer homepage within the NLIS database. Again, this is just a warning message about needing to go through MyMalay. Like I said, that isn't compulsory at this stage, but if you can, we do recommend doing that as early as possible, just to avoid any sort of hassles later down the line. Probably the key thing to call out here would be the help section. So we've actually got some help tools here and some user guides that can prove to be some handy resources for you guys if you do need some bit of guidance on how to use the database, etc. So that's always a handy section to be mindful of. And so we'll start to get into it now. So you're going to have 2 drop-down menus. The first drop-down menu is going to be what species you want to work with. So if we just click on that for the moment, as you can see, we've only got cattle and we've only got sheep mobs and goat mobs selected. So as we transition into sheep and goat eID, we're going to need to have sheep and goat individual selected as well. So we're just going to leave cattle here for the moment, and I'll just bring you to the second drop-down menu. And we've just got a few more options here that I'll talk you through. So we've got 3 blue subheadings that you can see here. So you've got account management, which is essentially making any changes to your NLIS account, such as updating contact details and that sort of thing. You've then got a notify the database of section. So essentially that's your doing section. So that's when you're actually uploading something to the database, whether it be a change to a device status, livestock movements, pick reconciliations, that kind of thing. That's when you actually want to be physically submitting something to the database. And you've then got your report section. So this is like your viewing section, I suppose. So I would say this is your doing section, and this is your viewing section where you can view numerous reports, such as if you want to verify if a transfer has been done, etc. That's where you would come to this part here. So as I said before, we've only got mobs available at the moment. So we now want to add sheep and goat individual as an option. So we'll just select mobs for the moment. And on the second drop-down menu, we're going to select this very top option, change my types of livestock, and we'll click go. And it's now going to bring up the other options that we can add to our NLIS account. So we're going to tick sheep individual, we're going to tick goat individual. If you find that a species is no longer applicable, if you're no longer trading cattle, for example, you can unselect that as well, and then just click continue for those changes to be saved. So it's now taken us back to the home page, and when we click on this top drop-down menu, you can now see that we've now got the individual options there. So if you do find that you've only got mobs selected, that's how you can update your account to have individual as well. So we'll select sheep individual for the moment. And from the second drop-down menu, so just remember, again, the notify the database of is your doing section. And so we're going to do a livestock movement onto our property. So we're going to select this one here, livestock moved onto my property, sheep and goat individual. We'll click go. You're then going to be presented with 2 options of how you want to record your NLIS transfer. So you can either manually type in the details on screen. So if you've already got a short list of the NLIS tag numbers, you can just copy and paste them onto the screen. Otherwise, if you've got a larger amount of head that you're dealing with and you've sort of you've scanned them on as they've arrived onto the property, you may find it easier to actually upload a file to the database as well. So that needs to be in a CSV format. Again, we've got the help section that sort of guides you on sort of the formatting of the file of how it needs to be, but you can certainly upload a file as well. For today's demonstration, we're just going to do the on-screen option. So we'll just click on that. And we're now going to start entering in the information about the transfer. So the first box will ask us to enter in the livestock numbers, or the tag numbers, I should say. So I've just got a pre-prepared list from before. So these are just the NLIS IDs, as you can see, because it's got the pick there at the start. So we're just going to copy and paste. It's a little bit misleading, this box. So you've got a red asterisk here that implies that you actually have to put something in there. But what we actually recommend is just coming into the bigger box and just pasting them into there. So that is something that we will tidy up. It is a little bit misleading, but you can just go straight to that bigger box below to put the numbers in. The next question is going to ask us which pick we're moving them to. So because we're doing a movement onto our pick, it's going to come up with a drop-down menu of what picks are linked to your NLIS account. So if you notice that your pick number is missing from your account, you need to send us an email to get that pick linked. So we're just going to choose one of our test picks that we've got here. Obviously, you guys will have a regular New South Wales pick number there. Where are we moving them from? So this is where we've received the livestock from. If you don't know off the top of your head, consult the NVD paperwork, because that will have the pick number on there of the property of where you received the animals from. The NVD serial number, that'll be the 8-digit serial number that's also on the NVD. I'm just going to obviously put in a fake number for today. When were the livestock moved? I'm just going to say today. Ideally, all transfers will be recorded within 48 hours. So once you receive livestock onto your property, you need to ensure that that transfer has been done within 48 hours of receiving the stock. Now, the big change to call out here is going to be the number of heads. So at the moment, we're still going to have a transition period where some sheep and goats will have an eID device and some will still have the old visual tag. So you may find that some lots that you receive, you may have a mix. You may have some that have got the eID tag and some that still have the old visual tag. So this function still allows you to actually record both of those in the one transaction. So what I've done is I've included 11 tag numbers, but we're actually going to say that we received 20 head. So we had 20 head received, 11 with an NLIS eID, which we've included here, and the other 9 just had an old visual tag, okay? So we'll click continue. This is just a little summary of what we're submitting. So we're submitting a transfer to this pick number from this pick. This is the NVD serial number. This is the transfer date. So this is the date when the livestock were moved. So if you're doing it a day or two after, make sure that you're putting the correct movement date. It's not the date necessarily that you're doing the transaction. It's the date that you received the stock and the number of head. So again, we've only got 11 devices here, but the total number being 20 because of those extra ones that had a visual tag. So we'll then click send. And it's just going to now submit this to the database. And we're now going to get 3 upload IDs. So this is, I'll show you in a bit more detail in a sec, but essentially this first one is going to be what we've submitted. And then it's going to then split out into 2 associated upload IDs to account for the 11 electronic tags that we've included and the mob-based movement for the extra sheep that just had a visual tag. So what we'll do now is we'll go to this report here, view my transaction history. And we'll just view from today because we've done the movement today. And this is what we've got. So this is the original or the first upload ID, which just contains all of the information that we've submitted. And then it's then split it out into an eID based movement for the tag numbers, as well as a mob based movement for the ones that didn't have an NLIS eID. And as you can see here, based on the upload status, these are complete, which means they've gone through successfully. you may find that sometimes you'll have a warning status. So a warning status means that what you have submitted has still gone through, but there have been some issues based on what you've provided. So the most common example being that the PIC number that you have said that you've received the stock from weren't registered to that PIC. So typically you've bought stock from, let's say you're producer C, you've bought stock from producer B, and before that they bought stock from producer A, but producer B never transferred from producer A. So you're then telling the database that you're receiving stock from producer B, but the database still has those devices registered to producer A. So it still allows the transfer to go through, but you're going to have that warning because we've now got that break in traceability due to that missing transfer from earlier on. The other status you may see is an error. And that means that whatever you have uploaded has not gone through. So you'll just need to click on that error. I mean, there's no error here, but if you click on that error status, it will then provide some detail on why that wasn't successful. And then, yeah, this is our mob-based movement. So that's how you do an eID transfer, and that's also how you can account for receiving lots that have got a mix of the eID tags and the visual tags. So if we just come back to home, I'll just quickly show you the other way that you can verify if a transfer has been done. So if we just go to view, generate all reports, and we want to have a look at livestock transferred onto PIC. So we want to have so you may have some stock that you've scanned, and you need to verify if they've been transferred. Again, you're going to be presented with a drop down of the PIC numbers available to your account. So just make sure that you select the appropriate PIC number that you're looking for. We'll just leave it as today's date because that's what we've just done. And we can see, oh, yep. So these two were involved. That was some other testing that must have been going on. But the top 11 is the transfer that we had just literally have just done before. So you can see there, it's got the RFID number, the visual number, the PIC that they came from, the NVD serial number, and the movement date. And it also tells you the species and if they are still lifetime traceable. If they're not, it'll be an N. So it's Y for yes and an N for no. But that's another way that you could, and if you need to look back, obviously, a few months ago or a certain date range, you can obviously just choose those start and end dates accordingly to verify if those transfers have been done or to check what was transferred at those times. I think that's pretty much, yeah. If you have noticed that you've made a mistake, that you've used the wrong PIC number, or you've included some of the wrong tags, you can do a transfer correction, and you will then have the option to either edit some of those devices. You can completely delete the whole transfer. If you just want to delete it and then resubmit the correct information, you can do that. Or you can just remove some of those entries. Like I said, if you've accidentally included some of the wrong tag numbers, you can just remove some of those entries from the transfer, and then you would just enter in the corresponding upload ID into that field there to complete that. Probably the other key report I'll show you as well, if you do need to do some record keeping, will be your active devices on PIC report. So this will show you what's currently registered to your PIC in the NLIS database. Now, just a heads up, when you...
So this will answer your question, Brianna.
Oh, yep. Sorry, I can't see the question, but I'm hoping it will. But this is what you can view as active devices on your PIC. Now, when you order NLIS devices, they will be uploaded to the database against your PIC number, and they are automatically marked as active devices. So our definition of an active device is actually both what you've obviously physically got tagged in an animal on farm, as well as tags that you have ordered or purchased, but you may not have necessarily used yet. So you may have a bag of 200, 300, 400 tags that you've ordered and that they're just sitting there. They are already active. So when you come to use those tags, you just simply need to open up the bag and just apply it to the animal, and it's already actively recorded against your PIC number. If you do need to view those particular devices, that's a common question we get is when you're doing a PIC reconciliation and you've got a bag of 500 tags that are unopened, rather than having to open up the bag and scan or read every single one, how can you actually view what you've ordered? You can use this report here, devices purchased. You then just choose your PIC number and the corresponding date range. I don't think I'm going to get any results using one of these test PICs, unfortunately. So I'm not sure if I'll be able to show you what the output exactly looks like, but essentially it'll just provide you, oh, I don't know why it's done that. But anyway, you won't have that issue. I can assure you, because you'll have your account set up properly. We do a lot of mucking around with these test accounts, but essentially, yeah, you just use that devices purchase report, and it will provide a whole list of devices and the device numbers that you've ordered, and you can then actually download and export that list if you need to include in your PIC reconciliation file. So that's a really handy one to be aware of. If you need to verify those particular device numbers as well. Does that answer the question? Sorry, I still haven't been able to see the question, but I'm hoping that's what it was.
Yeah, Cal, it was just, are we meant to register eIDs for stock born on property going forward? So hopefully that answers it, Brianna. Let us know if not. Okay, beautiful. Thanks, Cal.
No worries. I think that's pretty much it from a transfer perspective. I did have some goat tags as well, so I can go through and do a goat movement, but it literally is the exact same thing. You would just choose goat individual, livestock moved onto my property, and then again, you're just going through and entering in that information. And again, if you happen to have a mix where you've got some that are eID tagged and some that are just got a visual tag, you can just include all of the electronic numbers, but then in the number of head, you can include the overall number of head that you've received to account for that. So, but the process is the exact same. There's no differences there.
Just while we're already on the database, Cal, we've got a question, and you might be able to show, is the dashboard going back to the old blue and white color scheme, or is the old dashboard as it is a test account?
So there was briefly a new dashboard that was put out there, which it's sort of got like a grey sort of look and feel to it. If that's the dashboard that producers are referring to, that's actually going to be decommissioned. So what I would recommend doing, if you do find that when you log in, it doesn't look like this, in the top right hand corner in your profile, there'll be an option there that says switch to original, and then you can click on that and it will take you to this. So we recommend using this dashboard for the moment. And we've then got a larger piece of work called NLIS Uplift, which is actually going to essentially be a massive overhaul and upgrade of the NLIS database. That's probably at least still 12 months away at this stage, to be honest. But for the time being, this would be the best dashboard to use. So if you do notice that you've got something that looks slightly different, that may be an older one, and we just select switch to original in that top right corner and use this one for the time being until that larger project has come in and done a whole upgrade, which will hopefully make things a little bit more intuitive and easy to find. There are obviously quite a lot of functions and reports, as you can see, within your NLIS account. So the whole purpose of that project is to try and consolidate all of those into a smaller repository that makes it easier for you guys to find and use. So, yeah.
Great. Thanks, Cal. Is that at the end of your demonstration?
Yeah, that's pretty much it. I guess the other thing to call out too, if you do come across any sort of issues, pain points, you've got any sort of feedback that you guys would like to provide about your experience with using the database, or you've got ideas on how we can improve, you can actually click on this little blue feedback button on the NLIS page. We've actually also got this feedback icon on the ISC websites, the MyMalay dashboard, LPA. If you're using eNVD online, you'll also have a feedback option there. You can actually click on this and complete this feedback form, and that comes to myself and the broader operations team to review, to obviously make those improvements to the systems for our users. So if you do notice or pick up on anything that you would like to contact us about, please feel free to click on this little feedback icon as well. But yeah, I think that's pretty much it from the demonstration point of view. So unless there's any other questions, we can I can stop sharing my screen for the moment, I think.
Yep, just potentially a suggestion, bit of feedback in the chat from.
Yep.
Thanks for that. As I used the NLIS system on the weekend to transfer goats, and it was the grey and black one. Will the information about the best one to use be emailed to account holders or put in a newsletter?
About the dashboards, yeah, we can certainly, we've got a monthly Integrity Matters article, so we can certainly include a piece around the NLIS dashboards. Absolutely, yeah.
Great, thanks, Cal. Is there any more questions? Pop them in the chat if you have any. That's everything on my end anyway.
Brilliant. Yep. And I think I've got the ISC contact details on that presentation too, so we can circulate that to everyone that's online and registered as well, so that they can get in touch if need be.
Yeah, we'll send out this recording and we can chuck some contact details in there.
Yep.
That'd be great.
Awesome.
So if there's no more questions, I'll just pass over to Kiowa.
Yeah, thanks, Ebony. Just wanted to take the opportunity to thank everybody for taking their time out this evening to jump on to this webinar. Huge shout out to both Ebony and Callum for pulling together this webinar. I know it's one we've been asked for quite a bit in recent months, about how people can better make use of the NLIS and then actually do what they need to do in relation to these property-to-property transfers. So thanks, Ebony and Cal, for jumping on and sharing your knowledge with everybody here tonight.
Our pleasure, Kiowa. I guess while I've got everyone as well, it's probably just a good time to mention that we are, DPIRD and LLS are running events, workshops, training across New South Wales. So keep an eye out on both LLS and DPIRD events page. If there's any in your area, there is some online training for sheep and goat eID implementation on the DPIRD webpage as well. And we can chuck a link to that in the email that we circulate with the recording. Wonderful. Well, thank you everyone for your time. Thank you, Callum. Thank you, Kiowa. That's fantastic. And I'll just double check, nothing in the chat. Oh, great. We'll give everyone an early mark. Thank you all.